G'day folks, I'm just doing something I've been meaning to do for quite a while, which is to build a waste oil pump. I'm going to use it for the flame spinner out there, the old Miele drum unit, and I'm just modifying this used power steering pump. This is an old Mercedes-Benz truck pump, so it should put out a fair bit of volume. It doesn't actually look much bigger than conventional power steering pumps, but the ports on it seem to be a lot bigger. So it's plenty of oil flow, and I'm just making some copper lines and things. I'm going to make up a direct to tank regulator. I can just regulate the pressure that way. At the moment I'm just making up a fitting. I'm going to braze the copper tube into the end of the brass there, have it come down to a pressure gauge and just a dump valve. I don't want to run high pressure, I just want to run 100 pounds, maybe 200 psi, which is heaps. Even if it's just a trickle feed, it doesn't even have to be maybe more than 10 or 20 psi, just as long as this thing's idling over and getting oil up to it. I mean, even at that sort of speed, once it's primed, it'll do just fine. Not quite sure which way this pump's supposed to go, but if the crankshaft's going clockwise, it should probably go that way. So if it's mounted on the side of the engine crank's going clockwise from the front end. Yeah. So that should work. Either way, we'll see what happens. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's just bits and pieces I've had lying around for a while. Yeah. I'll do a little more work and post another up. Okay, I'm getting a little more elaborate than I was expecting, but it seems to work quite well. I'm using old refrigerant and oil fittings. They come off temporary diesel tanks from Volvo, and that's just a new old stock King valve that I had kicking around, so we'll use him for shutting it off when it's not in use. And I can also attach my gauge to this port here, or a gauge. I'm just going to use a capillary tube and a normal high pressure refrigerant pressure gauge or something like that, maybe even a hydraulic gauge. Not that I'm going to be pushing much pressure through this soft copper line. Yeah, it should be pretty good. So I'm going to monitor pump pressure more than anything else. I'm going to have a pressure dump off this side here, and yeah, it should work quite well. I'll see what pressure it does build before I start dumping pressure, but I've got a feeling I'm going to have to throttle it somehow, like make it kind of unloader. Unless this pump is self-regulating, which is what that might be, I might be able to play with that and get it to regulate its own pressure. I know some power steering systems have a bypass valve. That's what I'm looking for, a bypass valve. So it sounds like this should have a bypass valve built into it. Either way, we'll see what happens. Well, not pretty, but it'll work. I think this line's a little bit smaller than that one. That's the bit that I desoldered from it, so yeah. Just a little bit different, but that'll work. As always, wrap King valves and TX valves in a damp rag just so you don't cook the rubber O-rings that are in them. Otherwise you find yourself having to pull it to bits and do all the O-rings and things, and you get them really hot, it ruins the Teflon seat and other crap, so better off keeping it cool. I'm only brazing that with MAP gas. Works well enough. I really need an oxy, but I can't justify the cost of renting bottles. You can't just buy your own bottle and get it filled anymore, it's all rental. They've monopolised the whole gas industry. Same with shielding gases like argon for welding. You can't just buy a bottle and get it filled, it's actually a rental thing, and they charge you about $200 a year. Bit much money for me. I mean, it's probably not much nowadays, but I mean, compared with my earnings. But I just can't justify having a bottle sitting around for the small amount of time that I need a TIG welder or whatever. Eventually I will, but not at the moment. Because quite a few people ask me why don't I have a MIG welder or a TIG welder. It's just, main reason's the gas. Welders are cheap enough now, but having to spend hundreds of dollars a year on gas bottles and things, it's not fun. Not for the tiny amount of work that I do with it. Well, I'd probably find better things to do with it once I have one, but either way. Well, I figure while I do a bit more fiddling around out here, I'll start screening some oil into a storage drum. I've got a 60 litre steel drum outside that I can fill up with various waste oils that I've got, and I'm sort of rummaging around trying to find something to turn into a filter tank, so we'll use this plastic crate. Modified it with a fitting on the bottom. It just sits over the top of the drum, over the opening, and I've got a bit of screen material, whatever it is, over the top of it. It's this stuff here. My friend's got a roll of several kilometres of it, so he gave me a nice big bundle. It's great for making filters and things like that. Super fine, sort of the stuff they make those disposable coveralls out of for working with fiberglass and other things like that. So I'm going to go through all my drums of various sump oils and hydraulic oil and used heating oil, degreaser stuff, diesel, and just decant as much as I can into this one. And I've got another one in the back of the car, so I'll be able to go through a fair bit of it. The other option, if I can find one, is a 14 or 15 inch picture tube aperture grill. I recall somebody commenting on one of my videos saying he saves the complete undamaged aperture grills from cathode ray tubes for screening waste oil. The only CRT I've got at the moment is only a tiny little one, I mean colour CRT, but I'm going to keep an eye out for, say, a 14 or 15 inch colour monitor. Remove the vacuum from the tube safely and carefully remove the glass from the outside without damaging or perforating the screen, and then we'll try that as a drop-in oil screening mechanism. Well, this thing works pretty well actually. I'm down to my last drum, still probably 3/4 full. A bit of sludge and water I'm dumping into there. I don't drain the whole lot in there. I know I got a little bit of water at the end of that one, but not much. I'm going to set my siphon about a couple of inches off the bottom, so should be pretty good. Yeah, I could probably could have gone 2 layers of this stuff. Might even re-strain it if I need to, but the pump's expendable, so it doesn't matter if it eats a little bit of grit. But this does look like it's caught most of the contaminants that were in that drum, or drums.